So I want to break this out into more plans moving forward, but I did want to follow up a little bit on a couple of things. So there's definitely precedence when you don't respond to an affidavit, uncontested, unchallenged. So a case that you can cite is Woods versus Berry, 1931. And if you go down to the bottom there, the charge of bad faith against Berry is overborne by his affidavit of merits. That affidavit stands unchallenged and must be accepted as true. So if they don't respond to an affidavit, this is just one example. One other thing, that we had this conversation about statutes versus constitution, and a first-year law student learns a couple of cases in his first year of law school. Most of us are familiar with Marbury versus Madison, right? 1803, a law repugnant to the constitutions is void. An act of Congress repugnant to the Constitution cannot become law. The constitutions supersede all other laws, and the individual right shall be liberally enforced in favor of him, the clearly intended and expressly designated beneficiary. Then we also have Miranda versus Arizona in 1966, where rights secured by the constitutions are involved. There can be no rulemaking or legislation which would abrogate them. Okay, so these are things that we can cite in affidavits and notices, just to be very clear, but we want to be familiar with that. The last thing, just to follow up, is this concept of maxims of law. I know David Jose refers to, I guess other people have made this analogy, and maxims of law is kind of like an axiom in geometry. It's like you can't really argue against it because it's been argued so many times, it's like a proof. And that's why these things are used in these documents. You can't, when it applies, and I think Thomas Jefferson, something like this, in any court case that applied, where maximum of law applied, he said he never saw a case lose in court. Okay, so these simple fundamental principles and little basic knowledge that we learned here today empowers us, so we have the tools to do the right thing, because I think a lot of people are doing a lot of things and there's a lot of background noise. But when we simplify and just get down to fundamentals and we focus on that and get rid of all the noise that's going on, we can actually bring the change that we're seeking. And in this case, I know we're talking about the whole 5G stuff. So I think for the last few minutes before I hand it over to more of the conclusion stuff is maybe to brainstorm and get people involved here and how we can make this ongoing. This can't just be a meeting where we get together once a year or every 6 months. I think we've reached a point, a moment of reckoning, where the state of the technology and the kind of harm that is being caused or potentially could cause that, we need to all become active in different ways. And there's clearly a lot of different topics and subjects that we have to think about. And I know there is discussion about possibly in the summer or 6 months having another meeting, maybe in Phoenix. I don't know, that's kind of being already discussed. But I do think we need to think of incremental, ongoing, maybe for some people it might be weekly and other people it might be monthly, different subjects or topics that need to be dealt with based on your interests. And generally, to get this to work, you need to be around somewhat like-minded people that you get along with, and you have to have fun and make it entertaining. And I think there's a lot of little things that we can learn, and those things, it could be in person, it could be virtual, I don't know, it's going to be personal preference, you guys will have to figure that out. But I thought maybe coming up with a list of topics that we need to first learn ourselves, and then maybe educate our public servants or each other, right? So different strategies that we can use. So I'm happy for people to come up and give suggestions. But I've had a couple people come up with me already with ideas. We heard from the gentleman earlier about, right, the economic impact, right? If we allow this to continue or we slow it down, we need to look at alternative technologies and competition and things that are out there, right, that exist right now or maybe in the future. So I can see the economic topic bridging into kind of the technology, what kind of things are out there, and maybe bringing in other people that would like to be involved in this conversation. But we need someone to, of course, lead that. So I'm just writing that down here as a possibility. Another thing that somebody came up to, which I've been pushing for now 3 years, and while there's interest, there should be much more interest in this. It's clear we need platforms for open public discourse, discussion, debate, argument. We have to have healthy discourse where people can't attack each other. So one of the ways is to do this is to organize debates. Could be scientific debates because those are more difficult. We do have 3 universities here in Arizona. They all have debate teams. I know the guy that runs the U of A debate series, and they won the championship last year between the 3 universities. And so there is great potential, but we need more general public interest. So if that's something that interests you, what we need is basically a way to organize something. We can find moderators and maybe help, maybe NAU or ASU as well to be involved in that, depending on where you are. I just think this is important. We have to understand what logical fallacies are and be able to argue, and maybe the artificial intelligence is one of the first topics that could be debated. And there are different types of debates. You could have an expert on one side and another, or you can have panels, or you can just find 4 students and a professor. This is how I was trying to do at the U of A, still am. 4 students and a professor on each side. You have a topic, and then you just assign that team a side, and therefore they're required to do their homework and argue it, right? So this also improves student-faculty interaction. So I think there's lots of possibilities here, but still needs to be somebody to step up, take the lead, and it's always going to require some sort of organization or structure at some point once there's some learning that takes place. And I have to commend the organizers for this, because this is exactly what we need. This is what this is here. It's a platform where people came together. We can communicate these ideas. I'm telling you, this is the most difficult thing to do right now. So if more people that can do that, and if you know people in Phoenix or Tucson, we need more of these sorts of things ongoing and regular. And this is fun. It doesn't have to be every 6 months. You're at a microphone, so I'm going to let you jump in here.
In Prescott, we're currently rewriting our general plan, and they're inviting public input. I was there in January opposing a freeway through open space area. But I think it'd be a great time to ask that the ordinances on cell towers for Prescott be rewritten. And people could bring their own rewrites. Now, of interest is the chair of the general plan is Ted Gambogi, who voted to approve the Yavapai Hills cell tower. And he's a current candidate. He's running to be a candidate for city council. So he probably won't get my vote, but this is the time to take suggestions and ideas to them.
So great suggestion. So we need to have a team focused on local engaging your local elected representatives, informing them and educating them on a lot of different topics. And if you can just call them and meet with them once you're up to speed on something, and it doesn't have to be the 5G thing here, it could be anything, to sit down with them and have a conversation. And in Tucson, it's more difficult because we can't sit down with anybody, so we've got to use notices and affidavits. So you only have to use those if you're not seeing the kind of behavior and progress that you want. So I think there's probably quite a few people here that would be interested in first getting up to speed on a topic, maybe it's this one or something else, and then getting out there and meeting. If it's about drafting an ordinance, you have a possibility of hiring Campanella, either raising funds or having the city use funds and get them in there and fix your ordinance, make it protective before you have kind of what's happened in Tucson take place. So I would say that's got to be high on your list. So great suggestions. So I got 3 things I've written down. Lisa.
So I have 2 things, and the first one is what you were saying about local ordinances. How do we do that? But we have one thing in common in Arizona is we all have HB 2365. So if somehow we could make use of Mr. Campanelli's time to help us figure out how we can have ordinances in all of our cities that takes maximum advantage of protections given HB 2365, that would be great. And then the follow-on to that is, how do we get rid of HB 2365? We got to get rid of it. So what do we do? How can we organize? What are the means? Can we do can we vote it out? Do we have to get a member of the legislature to propose it? Someone already did and it didn't go to committee, etc. And then my last one. So in Tucson, they're rewriting their plan too, and they think that in Tucson, they're rewriting their city plan for 2030 now. and they're calling themselves a city of sustainability. But they're not taking into account the fact that these cell towers do have environmental effects. So just looking at that.
Right, so working backwards from Tucson, they also had the 2013 Sustainability Tucson, and they didn't really follow anything that was in that document either with the whole cell tower and the 2018 and 2020 version. So yes, I think the city council and mayor have their own problems with not meeting and addressing the people on this as being a topic. So that's going to have to be addressed first. They're not listening to people.
Okay, but the environmental effects of having all these cell towers go up is just not on the agenda anywhere.
Not only that, we need to assess what that impact is now that it's already been put into place and the consequences of that.
And there's been a lot of studies showing that they have use a lot of energy and are causing a lot of problems for environmental sustainability, climate change, et cetera.
Right, so we need representation to be able to look at those things in Tucson specifically. I think, and I wrote down, we need a team to look at state legislature and HB 2365 and to engage our senators and legislatures to, they already are somewhat aware of this, but we need to have their ear. We need to have an advocate. They need to listen to us, or otherwise they need to get notices and affidavits. So, in fact, while you were saying that, right before, Lori and Fountain Hills, who's actually making progress locally there, she just texted me that she's connected with Senator Kavanaugh and to work on to appeal HB 2365, but she says she would definitely need a team to do that. So we got people across the state to address that, and there have been quite a few other people have spent a lot more time at the state level. I never wanted to focus on state because despite HB 2365, there are so many things the local ordinances can do right now. You can deny a permit for matters of public safety. It's right in our state law, and it's being ignored. And there's many other things that they can do, and those are in our notices, and those are in our affidavit, right? So we've already outlined, and if our local community is not even following despite this, I guess it's called hoodwink law that was passed in 2017, so why do we continue to look at HB 2365 as the primary thing? I think certainly we want to look at it and work on it because that brings momentum in different directions. And I do think if that's what motivates you, have connections, and it sounds like we already do have connections, there needs to be a team to do that. And I do know there are newer legislation. I know Justine Wadsack in Tucson is very familiar on this topic and wants to bring this up at some point from her side. So that should just be, I've listed this here. And I don't know if we can have like maybe a sign up if each of these topics interest people so there can be follow-up. Ultimately, there has to be someone that kind of takes the lead to organize. But it would be good to collect people's names that are interested in these topics because you have a background or an interest in some of these things. I think that would be a good take-home before people leave. So I don't know if we could have a piece of paper where we're writing some of these general topics down. You want to jump in on the mic, one of you?
Yeah, I just want to say that in Arizona, we have the unique opportunity of both referendums and initiatives. A lot of states don't have that. And so whatever they're working on with the legislature, a grassroots people movement would be just as effective or possibly more effective. And it requires signatures to get an initiative onto the ballot, but there could absolutely be an initiative to rescind HB 2365.
Yeah, I wrote that down. So that could be part of addressing our state law, I guess we can call that in general. Yeah.
I have a suggestion with following Valerie Marsh, a personal health safety options or things you can do to keep yourself healthy now while we fix the problems. Because I know a lot of people ask me and say, well, I don't know what I can do. There's nothing I can do, but there are options out there. And I think that might be one way. People are very concerned about their health right now. And if we can get them in, get them talking, and hear what's going on, I think they'll be a lot more motivated.
Thank you for bringing that up. Of course, I'm a biomedical engineer, so I'm very interested in and not only things we can do to be protective, but I gave a presentation on the body electric a couple weeks ago in Scottsdale. So this could come in with technologies for helping people, because even though we focus on the negative aspect of microwave radiation, we can use light, sound, and electricity for beneficial purposes, different types of electricity, and this could be part of the conversation in terms of what I think will be the present and certainly the future of medicine in understanding how this technology works. So I wrote that down as general health, safety, technology, public safety aspect, as well as environment, I suppose. So absolutely. So definitely that should be one of the categories. Wow.
Sadly, we are out of time. One quick announcement. People are going to be going to Founding Fathers afterward to talk more. I don't want anybody to leave here and think, what are our next steps? Could you briefly comment on that? And then we are going to go with the next part of the program.
So next steps somewhat depends on each of you. It sounds like there's already plans for having another meeting like this, but I think what I just said, identify these topics, and we need people to step up now and take a lead, but do it. It has to be fun. It has to be educational. I'm happy to provide insight on any of these things and material because I have information on a lot of topics, but it can't just end at the end of this meeting. People need to get in groups and have ongoing meetings. So that to me, that's the next step forward. It's going to be up to you guys.
Thank you so much.
Yep.